Hello all. Our virtual meeting will come to order. The Assembly of the Young Lawyers Division for the 2021 mid-year meeting of the American Bar Association is now in session. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our second ever virtual meeting. My name is Chris Jennison, and I have the honor and privilege of serving as the Assembly Speaker this year. We will turn first to the national anthem to be sung by Council Delegate Aaron Sohaski, who also serves as the director of the division's Student Loan Debt and Financial Wellness Team.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watch were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Thank you very much to Council Delegate Aaron Sohaski for leading us in the national anthem. We will next hear from Administrative Law Judge Ash from the DC Commission on Human Rights, who will sing Lift Every Voice and Sing.
Lift every voice and sing, till earth and heaven ring, ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the glistening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling seas. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of a new day begun. Let us march on till victory is won.
Thank you to Judge Ash for that beautiful rendition. We will now be led in the Pledge of Allegiance by Delegate Darrell Wilson, who also serves as Vice Director of the Division's Diversity and Inclusion Team.
Hello, ABA YLD family. I bring you greetings from the great state of Mississippi. My name is Darrell Wilson, and I currently serve as the Vice Director for the Diversity and Inclusion Team of the ABA YLD, and I have the distinct honor of providing you with the Pledge of Allegiance today. If you would, please recite the pledge with me. I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Wilson. Next up, we will turn to our invocation, which will be given by Captain Fabiani Duarte of the United States Air Force, who also serves as a council delegate on behalf of the Federal and Military Bar Associations.
Hello, everyone. Recognizing that we are an assembly of many gathered beliefs and traditions, I invite you to join me in this moment of communal reflection and prayer. O God of justice, mercy, and truth, we come to you this day blessed by your presence in our lives, grateful for the legal profession that we have the privilege to practice, and thankful for the people and opportunities that have led us to be a part of this distinguished body here today. We celebrate the diversity represented in this gathering and recognize our continued responsibility to build a more inclusive and accessible profession. We ask that you extend your favor on the work of this assembly and the dedicated service of all the members of our Young Lawyers Division. Illuminate our leaders and delegates with wisdom and courage. Help us to follow your instruction to be quick to listen, slow to anger, and thoughtful in our speech. Help us to remember that we only embody the civility and respect we have pledged to uphold when we truly love our neighbors as ourselves. Although we are gathered virtually today from locations that span the globe, we come together as one body, united in our commitment to strengthen our legal profession and to preserve the essence of what it means to be a lawyer, to help people. But Lord, we know we don't move mountains alone, and meaningful change we enact is not self-created. Therefore, we honor and thank you for the many individuals who help us help others. Thank you for our families and loved ones, for our paralegals and office colleagues, for the senior attorneys and professors who have mentored and taught us, and the junior practitioners who help us get the job done. In that spirit, we also ask a special blessing upon our tireless ABA staff members. Their wise counsel, kind partnership, and selfless support make us better leaders and a better division. And finally, Lord, in the same way that we have invoked your presence here today, we ask that you continue to watch over our nation and the democracy that we vow not to take for granted. Help us to heal each other when we are hurting, to be peacemakers even when it's painful, and help us to walk through darkness as courageous beacons of truth and reconciliation, so that together we can be the promise of a hopeful, redemptive dawn. May the positive spirit of our work today emanate beyond this meeting and into our personal and professional lives, so that we can reclaim our callings as true ministers of justice, guardians of the rule of law, and advocates for human beings who need our help. Thus, in the holy names of our collective faiths, let all those who do justice and love mercy say Amen.
Thank you to Captain Duarte for that invocation. As the first order of business, the Speaker recognizes Assembly Clerk Bray Connor of Sacramento, California, for a credentials report.
Mr. Speaker, I have certified 187 delegates. The list of the names of the delegates and alternates who have been certified up to the call to order appears in the register in my custody and online, which is available for inspection during the meeting by any delegate by sending a request to yldassembly2021@gmail.com. This roll of delegates is the official roll of the voting members of the Assembly. The quorum of this meeting is 94 delegates. In addition, I would like to acknowledge 4 outstanding delegations for not only filling their delegation seats, but winning our raffle prizes, the Spirit of Excellence Awards, and gift cards. They are the National Bar Association Young Lawyers Division, Maryland, Tennessee, and Florida. Individuals who are delegates still have an opportunity to win raffle prizes today by using Twitter and tagging at ABA YLD during assembly using the official YLD hashtag, #YLD Midyear. You will automatically be entered to win a Quimby CLE package, and a second place is a $75 gift card. Thank you to my entire credentials board, including a special appreciation to the clerk assistants, Brandy Pikes and Luis Benitos Burgos, who assisted in the credentialing this year.
Thank you, Madam Clerk, and thank you to the Credentials Board members and staff who assisted you in outreach leading up to this meeting. As we are in our second ever virtual assembly, we wanted to continue the conversation on social media as we get into the debate today. To give us some tips on social media engagement, we'll next hear from Ray Panetton, Director of Marketing and Communications for the YLD.
Hi, Ray Panetton here, ABA YLD Marketing and Communications Director, and I'd like to welcome you to the ABA YLD Midyear Conference. Throughout this process, in order to keep up with not only event updates, but also to connect with colleagues, be sure to use the official conference hashtag on all social media platforms, which is hashtag YLD Midyear. Be sure to also follow the ABA YLD on all channels. On Twitter and Facebook, it's at ABA YLD, and on Instagram at ABA Young Lawyers Division, and we look forward to connecting with each of you.
Thank you, Ray, for that insight and those helpful reminders. We will now dig into the business of Assembly. The parliamentarian I have appointed for this meeting of the Assembly is Delegate Joey Cush from Colorado Springs, Colorado. Delegate Cush, joined by another advisor, Delegate Anthony Scioli, will be available to accept and respond to parliamentary inquiries throughout the Assembly meeting through the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic and the virtual nature of this Assembly, many of the traditions of Assembly simply aren't feasible. As Speaker, I've assembled an Assembly Operations Task Force consisting of representatives appointed by the division's officers as well as affiliate representatives. This task force is co-chaired by Delegates Anthony Scioli and Joey Cush of Colorado. The task force has examined our Assembly standing rules, and in recognition of the uncertain nature of when we will be able to reconvene in person again, has made a simplified set of rules for remote Assembly meetings. These remote Assembly standing rules must be adopted by vote of the division here today as the first item of voting business. They are located within the materials that were circulated for all delegates in advance of this meeting and are located on the Assembly webpage. In addition, the Secretary of the Division, Joe Bond of Washington, D.C., has agreed to second all resolutions and motions that are in order before the Assembly today, so that we may proceed to debate and consideration, given the unique technical limitations we have. At this time, the motion has been made by Delegate Scioli to adopt the remote standing rules, and the motion, again, has been seconded by Secretary Bond. If there are any delegates who wish to speak in favor of or opposition to the remote Assembly rules, please indicate your desire to speak using the Q&A function of this Zoom meeting, and you will be elevated to presenter in just a moment. In the meantime, the speaker recognizes YLD Administrative Director Tamara Nash of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, for a report on action of the YLD Council related to this motion.
Mr. Speaker, the YLD Council considered the proposed Assembly remote standing rules at its February 17, 2021 Council meeting. The Council voted in favor of recommending that this Assembly approve and adopt the Assembly remote standing rules.
Thank you, Delegate Nash. The speaker is not aware of any individuals who wish to speak in favor or in opposition to these rules at this time. I'll give it just a moment in case I've missed anyone. Again, if you wish to speak in favor or in opposition to this motion or any motions today, the way you can do that is using the Q&A function located at the bottom of your screen. We will elevate you to be a panelist, and at that point, when you are recognized, you may proceed. I'll explain that in a little bit more depth in just a minute. Again, I'm not seeing anyone who wishes to speak in favor of or in opposition to these remote Assembly standing rules at this time. We will now turn to a vote. As Council has endorsed these remote standing rules, this motion only takes a simple majority vote to pass. Please listen carefully to the instructions on how to vote due to the nature of our virtual voting today. At the bottom of your Zoom window, you should see a button that says Participants. If you click Participants, a sidebar should launch, which allows you to see several functions. One in particular is the Raise Hand function. For each vote today, I will call for those in favor of a motion to virtually raise their hand and keep it raised until I say otherwise. We will count the number of hands raised, and after a moment, we will lower your hands. I will ask for those opposed to virtually raise their hand at that time, and then we'll count your hands, and we will lower your hands. We have two delegates, Sheila Spence and Daryl Wilson, counting hands, and I thank them for their help. Now for the vote on remote standing rules. I would ask that all in favor of the motion to adopt the remote Assembly standing rules, please say aye at this time by using the voting function to raise your hand and keep your hand up. I apologize in advance for the length of time that's going to take on some of these votes. We want to make sure that we're getting all the votes accurately counted. So it's important as we come to the end of any motions or any resolutions to listen carefully so you know exactly when I am asking you to raise your hand for either the aye votes or the nay votes. I'm coming to I see a slowdown on the number of hands being raised at this point. So I will ask the tellers to take a final count and then lower the hands as they deem appropriate. I'm kind of at I'm at their discretion a little bit. So again, apologies on the length of time it's going to take for some of these votes. Tellers, when you're ready, go ahead and lower the hands. I'm seeing individuals lower hands. So again, I apologize. I'll explain this again one more time. Once you raise your hands, keep them raised. Our tellers will lower your hands when they have the accurate counts. I know this is a little bit confusing, and I know this is going to be a little bit problematic as we go through. However, what I would just ask is raise your hand on the aye vote or the nay vote when you find that you want to vote. So if I say aye vote, raise your hand and keep it raised. We will lower your hand. If you want to vote nay, when I call nay votes, raise your hand and keep it raised until we vote. So I'm going to ask again, everybody who's in favor of this motion, this is a good warm-up for us. Everybody who's in favor of the motion of adopting the remote assembly standing rules, please keep your hands raised at this time using the raise hand function. Keep it up, don't put it down. We will put it down at the appropriate time. Again, part of the length of time that it takes to count these votes is we're ensuring that those who are voting are actually eligible to vote and be counted today. So it does just take a second for us to count those. I see that the tellers have lowered the hands. So if there are any delegates who are opposed to the adoption of these remote assembly standing rules, I ask that you say nay at this time by raising your hand and keeping your hand raised. Again, if you wish to oppose the adoption of the remote assembly standing rules, say nay at this time using the raise hand function and keep your hand raised. Speaker is not seeing any delegates in opposition to the adoption of the remote assembly standing rules. The ayes have it, and the motion to adopt the remote assembly standing rules have as the rules of this meeting have passed and are adopted. Now I'll give a brief overview of the mission of the Assembly. This Assembly has, in some form or other, convened young lawyers from across the country since August 1959. The purpose of convening is to ensure representation of varied young lawyer perspectives on matters of concern to the legal profession. In the 61 years since that first meeting, this Assembly has afforded an opportunity for young lawyers to be heard on issues and may be on the forefront of their minds, even if those ideas would not otherwise gain traction in the big bar. This Assembly provides an invaluable forum for young lawyers to be heard and respected as we debate ideas, and I expect the participants of this Assembly to treat each other with professionalism and decorum. Today, you will hear 6 resolutions as laid out in the agenda in your materials. Delegates who use the debate speaker and motion form to sign up in advance of the meeting will be given priority to debate and make motions. If you did not sign up in advance and wish to debate or make a motion, please use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen, and we will attempt to line you up in our virtual queue so that you can be recognized. Our Assembly administrators will promote all registered speakers from a webinar attendee to a webinar panelist, during which time it may appear that your Zoom window is closing out and then reopening as a Zoom meeting. Please do not forget to introduce yourself, and if you are a pro speaker or a con speaker on the resolution, and I ask that you please speak clearly. When entertaining resolutions, debate will alternate between proponents and opponents. The The delegate moving the resolution has up to 6 minutes and may reserve time for rebuttal. The delegate opposing the resolution also has 6 minutes, but may not reserve time for rebuttal. Those providing council reports on resolutions will have 4 minutes, and all other speakers will have 2 minutes. The timekeepers that I have appointed for this meeting are delegates Shasta Inman and Jennifer Robinson. All attendees will be able to see each speaker's designated speaking time displayed on their screen. If you wish to make a parliamentary inquiry, as I mentioned before, again, use the Q&A function. I will not recognize any motion unless it is a motion that is in order when another has the floor, such as a point of inquiry or a parliamentary inquiry. A call for the question, in other words, a call to end debate and proceed to a vote, is not in order from your virtual seat. If you wish to call for the question, please submit your request in the Q&A function and wait to be recognized. Additionally, if you wish to offer an amendment, please send the language of the amendment in writing to the Assembly Assistant Rich Rivera via email to rrivera@sgrlaw.com. I'll put that in the chat in just a moment. Sending the amendment text to Assistant Rivera will allow us to manage the logistics of editing a resolution on the fly and also allow us to broadcast it to the delegates at the appropriate time. Thank you for listening as I explain the mission and the procedures of this unique assembly of the division. We will now move on to the presentation of the agenda. We will discuss the agenda and the consent calendar. The agenda was distributed to the Assembly delegates electronically prior to this meeting and is currently available for review through the ABA YLD website. A summary of each resolution will be listed on the screen and also on the agenda. The full text of these resolutions is posted on the ABA YLD website, and it was also electronically distributed to each delegate several times in advance of today. Any delegate had the ability to object to placement of any of these resolutions on the consent calendar by the stated deadline of February 12th, 2021. The deadline to object to the placement of a resolution on the consent calendar has passed, and all resolutions on the consent calendar shall stand approved. We will now turn to a special presentation from Senior YLD Delegate to the House of Delegates, Dana Hrelick, with an update on YLD matters in the House of Delegates.
Hi, my name is Dana Hrelick, and I'm the Senior House of Delegates representative for the YLD. I'm happy to provide you with a brief summary of the YLD's resolutions that passed at the 2020 House of Delegates annual meeting and those that we are bringing to the mid-year meeting next week. In August 2020, the YLD was the primary sponsor of 2 resolutions. Resolution 100A urged all employers in the legal profession to implement, maintain, and encourage the use of paid family leave policies for birth, adoption, or foster placement of a child. Resolution 100B was multifaceted in its approach. It urged federal, state, local, territorial, and tribal governments to enact legislation banning race discrimination on the basis of texture, style, or appearance of a person's hair. It supported the interpretation that race, as included in anti-discrimination statutes, not be limited to the color of one's skin, but rather include other physical and cultural characteristics associated with race. It encouraged all federal, state, tribal, territorial, and local court systems, in conjunction with state, territorial, tribal, and local bar associations, to carefully review their discrimination policies and to provide implicit bias training to eradicate discrimination on the basis of texture, style, or appearance of a person's hair. And finally, it supported enactment of the Creating a Respectful and Open World for Natural Hair, or CROWN Act of 2019, and other similar legislation that advances anti-discrimination on the basis of the texture, style, or appearance of a person's hair. The YLD has sponsored and is bringing several resolutions to the House of Delegates next week. The first is Resolution 106A, which encourages respect for the gender identities and pronouns of participants in the legal profession and judicial system, and it urges judiciaries to draft and implement rules supporting the same. The other 106 resolutions continue to advance an agenda that puts student loans and the cost of education at the forefront of the association. They propose broadening opportunities for individuals who are managing student loan debt, which can be crippling, and they call for advocacy on issues including federal loan program qualifications and the ability to suspend or forgive loan obligations. The House of Delegates meets this coming Monday. If you are a member of the House or are otherwise interested in advancing young lawyer policy, I would encourage you to attend the virtual Young Lawyer Caucus on Sunday afternoon. Please reach out to Speaker Jennison for details. I will be there with the division's 3 other representatives, Daiquiri Steele, Sheila Willis, and Asta Madan Farr. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Relic, for that update. I, as well as the full division, wish you and our other HOD delegates success in the upcoming meeting of the House of Delegates. We will next hear from American Bar Association President Patricia Lee Rifo from Phoenix, Arizona.
Thank you all for participating at this YLD Assembly and for all you do to advance justice and a strong legal profession on behalf of the organized bar. The ABA YLD's leadership is in outstanding hands this year with your terrific chair, Chris Brown. In some respects, it can be blissfully convenient to convene from the comfort of our own homes. Still, many of us find it less than ideal to do so for hours at a time on a screen with all of the distractions at home and mindful of the missed opportunity to enjoy time together in Chicago, even in February. So your efforts to carry on the work of the Young Lawyers Division and the Assembly at this ABA mid-year meeting are all the more commendable. But you know, bar associations are built around collaboration, joining forces, and learning from one another. And we are learning a great deal about the highest and best uses of technology to connect, especially thanks to the examples of young lawyers. Still, I believe the ideal way to keep our bar associations vibrant and to accomplish great things together is to have occasions to meet face to face, whether it's in hotel meeting spaces, hallways, or at receptions and meals and other shared events that are both fun and filled with common purpose. I miss those times. And I miss very much not being able to be with you today in person. But I know this. The investments bar leaders have made in the relationships we've cultivated are paying off. They're paying off in the resilience we're demonstrating in this virtual world to serve our members, improve our profession, and fight for equal justice under the rule of law. I am so proud of what we at the ABA have been able to do without a single in-person meeting. What all of you have been able to do without a single in-person meeting. The wellness and diversity initiatives you are doing at this virtual meeting are just terrific. And of course, we will always need the essential dedicated volunteers of the YLD's Disaster Legal Services Program. So let me tell you just a little bit about some of the work that we've been doing this year, joining forces with lawyers everywhere. The ABA's Practice Forward initiative is, as you know, an extraordinary effort to collect and coordinate all of the ABA's work to address the changes in the practice of law that are coming out of this pandemic. It wouldn't be possible without input and resources from state and local bar associations and how young lawyers and all lawyers have responded to the challenges and changes in the practice of law. Practice Forward's website is continually updated with resources you and lawyers you know can use. It's at ambar.org/practiceforward. Practice Forward is also working to pass resolutions at the House of Delegates at this mid-year meeting in support of lawyer wellness programs and childcare assistance for working lawyers, both of which emerged as strong themes in the lawyer surveys we've been conducting for Practice Forward, and we'll have a report to share later this month. We're also redoubling our commitment together to addressing the public's staggering legal needs, particularly in our underserved communities. That's the mission of our task force on legal needs arising out of the pandemic, which has been coordinating the variety of pro bono and legal services efforts across the country to address the legal needs in our underserved communities. We've convened top representatives from the nation's leading pro bono and legal aid organizations, plus the National Center for State Courts, the Conference of Chief Justices, and the Administrative Office of the U.S. Courts. Lawyers are using platforms maintained by the ABA, like ABA Free Legal Answers, which not only serve our communities with pro bono legal advice, but also provide colleagues with the opportunities to serve and make a difference. This past year, of course, has also intensified calls for racial equity and anti-racism, and bar associations across the country are responding. At the ABA, every one of our specialty groups has made these a top priority through CLEs, publications, and a host of other important programming. We've also launched the ABA Legal Education Police Practices Consortium with 52 participating law schools. Law school faculty and students will contribute to the national effort to address legal issues in policing and public safety, including conduct, oversight, and the evolving nature of police work. The ABA, of course, represents lawyers in the halls of the new Congress and with the new administration, and we look for other opportunities to advance our values of an independent profession committed to due process and justice for all, including adequate funding for legal services through the Legal Services Corporation. The challenges wrought by this pandemic must not inspire us to simply restore our justice system to what it was. We need to learn from these experiences so that we can improve our institutions in service to the rights of all, to justice, fairness, and equity. And so that we can make our profession stronger, whether by tackling the problems of student loan debt, making mental health and wellness a top priority, or truly understanding how to make the law as diverse and inclusive as possible. We need you, and we have a lot of work together to do for many years to come. I wish you all my best for good health and fulfillment in all that you do.
A heartfelt thanks to my friend, President Rifo, for joining us virtually here today. We will next hear from the Chair of the House of Delegates, Barbara J. Howard of Cincinnati, Ohio.
I hope you all are having a good assembly and enjoying your meeting, even though it's virtual. And I know I wish we were in person. I'm sure you feel the same. I have the privilege of serving as the ABA Chair of the House of Delegates for this 2-year stint, with this being my first meeting in that role. And much like you, the ABA House of Delegates is a policymaking body, and we actually address the policy issues and policy that may be adopted by the American Bar Association. So we have about just under 600 members. They are very diverse from all sorts of entities and lawyer organizations across the country, and even some outside the United States. So we have members from bar associations, both state, local, and of course, including affiliated bar associations. We have people from the sections, divisions, and forums within the ABA, and other individuals who are delegates at large. So it's a pretty wide variety of people who will make up the members of the House of Delegates. We receive resolutions for consideration from all of these delegates and others, including the YLD, and if adopted, those become ABA policy, which then authorizes our Government Affairs Office to continue to try to move those policies into reality. And that happens often with Congress, but other places as well. So it's very important work that we do. We consider a wide variety of resolutions. And in fact, we have 3 resolutions this year from the YLD. Those 3 resolutions are in the 106 series. 106A is a resolution concerning respect for gender identities and pronouns in government and court matters, proceedings, and the like. 106B asks for loan forgiveness in bankruptcy for student loans under certain circumstances. And 106C is another financial hardship resolution, again proposed by the YLD. So I encourage you to join us to see what we do. In order for you to do that, you just need to go to the website, the ABA website, and go to the mid-year meeting, register for the meeting, no cost. Click the link for the House of Delegates and sign on as an event that you'd like to attend. Then you'll get the link and be able to join us. In addition to all the resolutions, you will hear from several of the officers of the association. And you will hear a wonderful panel presentation, which I really encourage you to consider listening to. That will happen at 12:15 Central Standard Time on Monday at the end of our first session. It's about whether there should be any structural changes to that Supreme Court. And that, of course, is very timely because President Biden himself has just commissioned a group to take a look at that very issue. That panel will be moderated by Judge Margaret McCune of the 9th District Court of Appeals. And the 4 panelists include Stephen Carter, Miguel Estrada, Sherilyn Eichel, and Neil Katal. A very, very dynamic, interesting variety of views, we think, and a great conversation. So I welcome you to join us for whatever time you can on Monday the 22nd. And in the meantime, enjoy the rest of your meeting, and above all, stay healthy. Till we meet again, I hope the next time in person. Take care.
Many thanks to the Chair of the House, Barbara Howard, for her remarks. We will now finally turn to the first resolution on the debate calendar of this Assembly. The first resolution is YLD Resolution 21-9YL. As will be the case with all resolutions today, the language of the resolution is being shown on the screen. In your materials, you should have also seen the resolution language and the corresponding reports that substantiate the resolution text. For the purpose of moving Resolution 21-9YL, the Speaker recognizes Delegate Onika Williams of Washington, D.C., who also serves as Chair of the National Bar Association's Young Lawyers Division. Delegate Williams has reserved 2 minutes for rebuttal. Delegate Williams, you may proceed with your proponent's speech at this point for up to 4 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good afternoon, Chair Brown, YLD officers, YLD Council, and the entire YLD Assembly. I humbly come before you today to ask for your support of Resolution 21-9YL to establish National Young Lawyers Week. This resolution was unanimously approved by the YLD Council on February 17th. With your support, 21-9YL would establish an annual coordinated effort to celebrate the contributions, importance, diversity, and leadership of the young lawyer within the legal profession and community. This annual effort would be led by the ABA YLD, its affiliates, including the national affiliates and their affiliates. The great civil rights legend John Lewis once said, "Every generation leaves behind a legacy. What that legacy will be is determined by the people of that generation. What legacy do you want to leave behind?" Delegates, I ask you today, as young lawyers, what legacy do you want to leave behind? As each of you know, our profession has always had young lawyers, and these young lawyers have always been integral to the survival of our profession. And as it has done with previous generations, the legal profession will continue to rely on young lawyers for at least 2 reasons. 1, young lawyers provide innovation and leadership in the legal field, and 2, young lawyers have helped to increase the diversity and inclusion pipeline for our profession. And it is for at least these 2 reasons, I ask you to vote in favor of 21-9YL. First, young lawyers should be celebrated for our innovation and leadership. Among us today are delegations of young lawyer sections and divisions from across the country who have led with innovation even in a pandemic. A few timely examples of this innovation and leadership are ABA YLD's revealing study on the crippling burden of student loan debt that has received nationwide coverage in publications such as Law.com and Law 360. One of the affiliate stars of the bar announced on Wednesday was the Arkansas Bar Association Young Lawyers Division for their name change and gender marker clinic. This year, the NBA YLD assisted the NBA's election protection efforts during the general election and the Georgia Senate runoffs, including helping to staff a Lawyers Committee election protection hotline on November 3rd. Our election protection efforts were recognized in a USA Today article and by the Lawyers Committee. If we had time, we could share hundreds of innovative programs led by today's delegates just this bar year. Second, young lawyers should be celebrated for leading our profession's diversity and inclusion efforts. When it comes to diversity, we know that our legal profession has to become more diverse over time. But we also know that it has become more diverse over time, but we also know there is much work to be done. As we all know, the ABA YLD has several programs and initiatives that aim to increase diversity and inclusion. including the ABA YLD Scholars Program and Embracing Diversity Challenge. The Florida Bar launched the hashtag #WildIsMe campaign to help defy the stereotype of what a lawyer is and does. The Virginia State Bar's Young Lawyers Conference hosts the Oliver Hill / Samuel Tucker Pre-Law Institute. The institute introduces minority high school students to the legal profession. The NBA YLD is the official partner with a first of its kind national mentorship pre-law program called the Bridge Builders Esquire National Mentorship Program for aspiring Black lawyers. Again, these are just a few examples of what our bars have done. By establishing a National Young Lawyers Week, each of our bar associations will help to amplify the important work and accomplishments of young lawyers and young lawyer divisions across the country. So again, I ask you delegates, what legacy do you want to leave behind? I hope you want to leave behind a legacy that includes formally recognizing the importance of the young lawyer to the legal profession for generations to come with a vote in favor of Resolution 21-9YL. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Williams. The speaker is not in possession of any slips in opposition to this resolution. If you wish to speak in opposition to this resolution or any resolution, be sure to indicate with the Q&A function. We'll give it just a moment, and I am not seeing any in opposition. We will turn to the Council Delegate and YLD Administrative Director, Tamara Nash, at this point for a report from the YLD Council.
Mr. Speaker, the Council considered Resolution 21-9YL at its February 17, 2021 Council meeting. The Council welcomed this resolution and the involvement of our national affiliate Young Lawyers divisions. The Council voted in favor of recommending that this Assembly adopt Resolution 21-9YL.
For the purpose of debate, the speaker recognizes the next proponent, Renee Morency of St. Louis, Missouri, who is also a council delegate. Delegate Morency, you have 2 minutes unless you waive.
Thank you, Chair Jennison. Shall I proceed?
You may.
Great, thank you. Friends, our profession is not known for embracing change. Young lawyers provide a fresh pair of eyes, an important guard against groupthink, innovative thinking, a counter to confirmation bias. You've heard us say it 100 times. Young lawyers are the future of the profession. What you haven't heard enough is that young lawyers have always been the future of the profession. 35-year-old Barack Obama was a young lawyer when he was elected to the Illinois State Senate. The report to the resolution states Fred D. Gray, at 24 years old, defended Rosa Parks against charges of disorderly conduct after she was arrested for refusing to give up her seat on the bus. He later became president of the NBA and received the ABA Spirit of Excellence Award and became the first Black president of the Alabama Bar Association. Colleagues, young lawyers make history, and we do it every day. Like when ABA young lawyers lead the way in providing disaster legal services, or like, as Ms. Williams just noted, when NBA young lawyers partner with election protection to safeguard that most democratic of endeavors, the vote. I foresee 3 outcomes that will result from the adoption of this resolution. Number 1, National Young Lawyers Week will give recognition where it's due. Number 2, it will perhaps prompt legal employers to showcase the contributions of their young lawyer employees. And number 3, most importantly, will amplify the voices of young lawyers to enable us to do more of what we do well, improve the practice of law and the administration of justice.
Thank you, Mr. Morency. For purposes of debate, do we have any opponent speakers? I'm not seeing any. Again, if you wish to speak in opposition to this or any of the debate resolutions today, use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. For purposes of debate and speaking as a proponent speaker, the speaker recognizes Tamara Nash unless she chooses to waive.
I would waive at this time, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Nash. For purposes of debate, do we have our next opponent speaker? speaker is not in possession of any slips or interest to speak in opposition. For purposes of the debate, the speaker recognizes the next proponent. We're going to move to Chair Chris Brown at this time, unless he chooses to waive.
I will waive, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Chair Brown. Seeing no further debate, I'm talking slowly so that people have chances to get their slips in or their Q&A in. Seeing no further debate on this, the speaker recognizes Delegate Williams for a 2-minute rebuttal unless she chooses to waive.
I choose to waive. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Williams. Delegates, please take a second and consider your vote. The question on the table is on the adoption of Resolution 21-9YL. This motion takes a simple majority. We're going to do the voting the same way we did for the remote assembly rules. All those in favor of the motion say aye at this time by using the voting function to raise your hand and keep your hand raised. And while you are voting, and while the tellers are counting the vote, you're going to hear the first of many PSAs today. The ABA President-elect Reggie Turner of Detroit, Michigan, reminds you all that the deadline to apply for the ABA presidential appointment process is today. There are more than 600 appointments to different ABA standing committees, special committees, commissions, and other association entities and initiatives. And he strongly encourages young lawyers and says that young lawyer perspectives are highly valued. Apply by 6 p.m. Eastern today via the ABA website, and we will be sure that the link is posted in the chat as well in just a moment. I am standing by for the tellers to lower the hands when they have an accurate count. Again, do not lower your hands yourself. I'm seeing that the tellers have lowered the hands, so we'll move to a nay vote at this time. If there are any delegates who are opposed to the adoption of this resolution, please say nay at this time by using the voting function to raise your hand. And on to my second PSA of the day. I'd like to take a moment to feature a great program whose deadlines are coming due soon. The YLD Scholars Program is designed to encourage the participation of minority, solo and small firm, government, private sector, and military service attorneys in the division. Participants get financial assistance for participation, appointment to division boards and teams, mentorship, and more. The deadline to apply for the Scholars Program is March 31st, 2021. We will also ensure that the link for the Scholars Program is posted shortly in the chat as well. I will ask the tellers lower the hands when they have an accurate count. And while they're doing that, I'll say that I was a scholar, and I highly recommend that those who might be interested reach out to leaders in the division or look at the website to find out some more information on that. And tellers, when you have a count, go ahead and lower the hand so I know that you have a count. Sorry for the technical delays and the slow process of our voting today. At the same time, it's probably faster than if we were in person and walking around with clickers to check the votes too. I am informed by the tellers that there are people still raising their hands. So we're going to do this one more time. If you are opposed to the adoption of 21-9YL, please raise your hand and keep it raised. If you are opposed to the adoption of 21-9YL, please raise your hand using the raise hand function and keep it raised. And we're going to keep it up for just a minute while we let the tellers check individuals' votes and make sure that we're getting an accurate count. All right, see the tellers lowering your hands, so they're going to get to me with the results in just a second. And this resolution 21-9YL is adopted by the Assembly. Thank you, Delegate Williams. We will now hear from the ABA President-elect, Reggie Turner of Detroit, Michigan.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for inviting me to share a few words during the YLD Assembly. It's very important to have active young lawyer members carry the torch and be the future of the legal profession. Your success is success for the profession, so we support you on your journey. I'm acutely aware of how challenging it has been for you, for all of us during this pandemic. I'm empathetic to the need to juggle concerns about an uncertain job market and sustaining student loan payments and the issues that young lawyers are faced with. That's why the ABA continues to raise its voice and recommend relief efforts and policies that assist young lawyers. I also know how resilient and tenacious great young lawyers are, and the fortitude that you exude to achieve your goals. Hold on to the passion and purpose that drove you to become a lawyer. It will give you focus and sustain you on the winding road of life and your career. I'm so proud that my daughter, who graduated from college in May 2020, is preparing to take the law school admissions test. While I could not be more excited for her to embark on her path to law school, I support her by not being a source of pressure. As president-elect of the American Bar Association, I look forward to working with you in this coming year. I can learn a great deal from you as well. I'm honored to follow in the footsteps of those who have led the association in providing the voice of the profession. Please know that I will continue to stand with ABA leaders on issues that positively affect our young lawyers. Have an excellent convening. Thank you.
Thank you very much, President-elect Turner. The next resolution up for debate was 21-10YL. However, the Speaker is in possession of a request to withdraw this resolution at this time, with an understanding that the resolution may be brought back at a future meeting of this Assembly. The Speaker thanks the resolution sponsor and welcomes her resubmission at a future Assembly. I do want to take a moment of personal privilege as it relates to this resolution. Since 1934, the Young Lawyers Division and its predecessors have served and promoted the interest of young lawyers within the association and the profession. In that year, association members debated whether the country needed an independent bar association to serve the interest of young lawyers, or whether young lawyers were integral to the work of the ABA. It was my predecessor's view, as it remains mine, that the work of young lawyers is intrinsically tied to the success of this association. As was said at the time, the ABA needs the enthusiasm, talents, and time that the younger members can give to it. Young lawyers have championed diversity and inclusion in the ABA, assisted in securing the approval of the Model Code of Professional Responsibility, and been at the forefront of many other policy discussions. This Assembly has been and will always be a welcoming place for the respectful debate of the ideas of our members, and we will not tolerate the influence of the outside pressures that curtail our respectful debate. With the end of my rant, we will move on to a brief set of remarks from ABA Secretary Pauline Weaver.
I'm Pauline Weaver, your ABA Secretary. Thank you so much for inviting me to make a few remarks. I began my ABA career more than 40 years ago with YLD. The friendships that I formed have stayed with me throughout those years. I hope the same will be true for you. For those of you that don't know, the Secretary is the eyes and ears of the association. I serve as a liaison between the House and the Board of Governors and between the board and the larger ABA. I'm also an ex officio member of the Constitution and Bylaws Committee and Rules and Calendar. As you begin your work during this mid-year meeting, please feel free to call on me if there's any way that I can assist you. I'm here to help you in any way that I can. I wish you much success in all of your deliberations. I look forward to seeing many of you in the House now and in the years to come. Thank you for all that you do for the ABA.
Thank you, Secretary Weaver, for joining us. I, for one, am greatly appreciative of your friendship with the division and also your brevity in your remarks in recognition of the important and lengthy amount of work that we have to do here today. We will next hear from Kevin Shepard, ABA Treasurer from Baltimore, Maryland.
Hi, my name is Kevin Shepard, ABA Treasurer. It is a pleasure to speak with the YLD Assembly at this year's virtual mid-year meeting. We all wish we could meet in person, but as we emerge from the pandemic, we will again meet soon. I very much look forward to that day. In the meantime, I want to share with you the current financial status of the association, the work on the fiscal year 22 budget, and a personal note of why it's important to be active in our wonderful association. On the financial front, I will not bore you with graphs and charts. Rather, I will provide a 10,000-foot view of the current financial picture. For the fiscal year ending on August 31st, 2020, on the revenue side, we have an unfavorable variance against budget of $35.8 million, which is largely attributable to the pandemic. This shortfall is mainly comprised of reduced revenue on meeting fees and sponsorships and a $4 million shortfall in dues revenue. But on the expense side, we had a favorability against budget of nearly $33 million. Obviously, we had lower meeting expenses, which totaled $18 million, reduced compensation and benefit expenses, and $5 million in other favorability. Thus, when factoring in certain year-end accounting adjustments, we experienced a $14 million favorability to budget, which was welcome news. With respect to the first quarter of this fiscal year 21, we're seeing the same general trend in terms of reduced revenue based on budget and favorability in expenses against budget. The effects of the pandemic are still with us, and they will continue to be with us until we resume our traditional activities. We continue to have a strong balance sheet in spite of the tremendous challenges created by the pandemic. Through the first quarter of our fiscal year, and that is through December 31st, 2020, our net assets increased by $15.6 million. Let's hope that trend continues. We're now focused on the fiscal year 22 budget. Based on current information, we are projecting a $7 million budget task for fiscal year 22. Most of that task is attributable to the projected due shortfall because of a loss of some of our senior members. The work of this budget task has been allocated among the 3 substantive board committees, and they are having meetings to decide what areas to recommend for expense reduction. Although we need to work through the fiscal year 22 budget, I am heartened by our growth in membership. We have added more than 35,000 new dues-paying members since the launch of the value proposition. These new members are largely younger attorneys, which bodes well for the long-term financial health of the association. As President Grifo frequently reminds us, increased membership is a long-term solution to our financial issues. We are thus committed to growing membership at all levels. Let me add a personal note about why the ABA has been so central to my career path. It all started with a simple phone call in 2002, nearly 20 years ago. At that time, I was working up the leadership ranks of the real property section. David Tang, based in Seattle, was the then chair of the real property section. Since I was close to Washington, D.C., he asked that I attend a meeting at the Justice Department on something involving gatekeepers. He wasn't altogether sure what that meant, but he thought it dealt with anti-money laundering and its impact on the legal profession. That phone call and the events that followed profoundly changed my career. I attended that meeting, was soon appointed to the newly formed ABA Task Force on Gatekeeper Regulation in the profession, and thereafter embarked upon a nearly 20-year journey that has taken me to countless international and domestic meetings, working with officials at the highest levels of U.S. Treasury and Congress, allowing me to testify before the U.S. Senate on proposed gatekeeper legislation, and causing me to write several law review articles and present at countless CLE meetings here and around the world. Throughout this journey, I've made invaluable contacts with policymakers, legislators, and bar association leaders from around the world. I would have never imagined that a single phone call on a then obscure ABA matter would have had such a profound effect on my career path, but it did. I'm grateful that I took advantage of this opportunity. I encourage all of you to embrace the opportunities that may come your way through our work in the ABA. Thank you.
Thank you, Treasurer Shepard, for your remarks. We will now move into the next resolution up for debate, 21-11YL. This resolution will not be considered by the House of Delegates at this mid-year meeting. For the purpose of moving Resolution 21-11YL, the Speaker recognizes Delegate Matthew Kurbis of Chicago, Illinois, who serves as the division's liaison to the section of legal education and admissions to the bar. Mr. Kurbis reserved in advance 4 minutes of his time for rebuttal. Delegate Kurbis, you may proceed for up to 2 minutes at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I urge adoption of Resolution 21-11YL. As the young lawyer liaison to the section of legal education and admissions to the bar, while I have not personally had to take a bar exam in the last year during the pandemic, I have been to the front lines and I have seen what law students and recent graduates are dealing with, that I felt it necessary fulfilling my obligations as liaison to the section of legal education to draft this resolution and submit it to the Assembly for consideration. I understand there's some debate as to what action should and shouldn't be taken with regard to the bar exam. I had to take it, so everyone else should have to take it. Seems to be a common rebuttal to any change. I disagree. I hope you've had a chance to read the motion or to read the resolution. And I just want to point out that it is broad, but I urge effective reform measures be taken. And I think that while it's not explicitly said in the report, that the many issues that we found with the online bar exam, I think on its face, those are ineffective measures and that those should be avoided. So the language is broad in the resolution because I think it's important that the Young Lawyers Division shows incoming young lawyers, law students, recent graduates sitting for the bar exam, that we stand with them, that they are welcome in this organization and we support them and we support changes to the bar exam and changes to licensure. I do not think we should rush to any changes, but I do think we need to show with broad support that we support them. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Kurbis. For the purpose of opposing YLD Resolution 2111YL, the Speaker recognizes Mr. Rice from Dartmouth, Massachusetts, who also serves as a member of this division's resolutions team. Mr. Rice is not a voting member of this Assembly and lacks the authority to make a motion, but Mr. Rice, you may speak for up to 6 minutes in opposition at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Kurbis, and members of the Assembly. I rise today in opposition to Resolution 2111YL, and I'm in the odd position of opposing a resolution with which I fundamentally agree. The 2020 bar examination administration was horrendous, and many jurisdictions adopted measures which, frankly, were indefensible. My heart and compassion extend to every candidate for admission navigating these uncertain waters, and I do not stand here today defending the status quo. At the same time, I'm mindful that these problems regarding both the efficacy and the challenges of administration are not new. While COVID has perhaps illuminated and exasperated some of those challenges and limitations of the bar exam process, this discussion is hardly novel. My simple point today is that we need good bar admission procedures that will be both equitable to candidates and promote public confidence in the profession. After reviewing this resolution and the proposed recommendations, I do not believe those goals are accomplished in a meaningful way, but I do believe we can nevertheless accomplish something here today. Thus, I oppose the resolution as written, and I have offered an amended resolution or language for an amendment that I believe Mr. Kurbis is considering. On its face, this resolution expressly disclaims any effort to propose the single solution to reforming attorney licensure or a single fix-all solution to the bar exam. Rather, the resolution contends that the adoption will provide the ABA with sufficient authority to be the organization that helps synthesize bar exam changes and licensure reform across the US. Further, the resolution proffers that it supports the idea that the bar exam can be and should be reimagined to reflect the modern practice of law as best fits the jurisdictions administering the exam. But ideas and policies differ in significant ways, and the recommendations afforded by this resolution are so broad as to not be policy at all. What is sorely needed now is leadership in identifying a proposed way forward. The ABA is in a unique position to offer just that, and I think it is time that we do so. Resolution 2111YL is deficient because it fails to offer a meaningful way forward. First, this resolution is vague and ambiguous and does not offer any specific actionable step any jurisdiction might adopt. Exactly what policy are we adopting today, if any? Who knows? Next, this resolution does little to alter the current allocations of power and decision-making and at bar exam administration and bar admissions. It amounts to little more than an admonition to each jurisdiction's bar admission overseers to do better. It entrusts this responsibility to the very same entities that it critiques for causing negative issues with the administration of the 2020 bar exam. At the same time, it overlooks the allocation of resources between state authorities and vendors, such as ExamSoft and the National Conference of Bar Examiners. Many of the proctoring protocols, which this resolution complained of, were actually the device of ExamSoft, not of any specific jurisdiction. And it was developed by the software companies. Presumably, jurisdictions will be limited in their ability to change those protocols so long as using these vendors. Likewise, the NCBE has been the subject of claims pertaining to the lack of transparency and self-interest. Thus, it is unclear how much the bar admissions overseers themselves could or would do to fully respond to this resolution. It gives them license to simply say, we're fine, what we're doing works. Relatedly, this resolution assumes that there will be universal agreement over both the problems and solutions present in the bar exam administration. The resolution urges effective bar admission reform, but effective according to whom? Effective in terms of accomplishing what? What priorities? Surely bar examiners and candidates for admission have different interests. What is effective for one may not be effective for the other. Likewise, candidates themselves may confront very different issues. What is effective for one may not be effective for others. The resolution simply overlooks the various stakeholders involved in administering the bar exam. Finally, I am most troubled by the resolution's reference pertaining to alternative paths to licensure. The reference is far too vague. I believe, and in fact, I welcome and admonish this body to debate alternative paths to licensure, to debate the diploma privilege, or other proposals such as apprenticeship paths to licensure. I'll confess to having some reservations about both modes, but I believe further study and discussion is warranted. Among my concerns is the danger of discriminatory impact on minorities, conflicts of interest in law schools, the dangers of competence as code for status-based distinctions, and the remaining need for some independent summative-based screening of candidates for admissions. But this resolution today does not provide us the opportunity to have that conversation. I am not here to minimize the need for reform. Rather, I offer my voice to call for the ABA to take leadership on this issue. The ABA is well suited to provide leadership on this issue at a national level and has done so on a number of issues in the past, promulgating standards and rules that jurisdictions have relied upon in developing their own processes. Accordingly, I respectfully ask that this body either consider an amended version of this resolution to call for the ABA to take leadership and not simply delegate the responsibility to various jurisdictions, and that they deny the resolution as submitted. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rice. As noted, you do not have the power to make an amendment at this time. We will move on to the next proponent of this resolution as written. The next proponent that the speaker has listed is Renee Morency. Delegate Morency, you may proceed for up to 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Half a year ago, many of us advocated for passage of Resolution 10G. Shortly thereafter, it was cited as state authorities determined what changes to make. The states pivoted in a variety of ways, as most of you know. Some delayed the bar exam, some provided for remote exams, some spaced examinees farther apart so that anxious aspiring lawyers would no longer have to be crowded together at narrow tables. Yes, even diploma privilege. Folks, as far as I can tell, the world did not end. Pigs didn't fly. The public was not all of a sudden overrun by unfit new lawyers. This resolution is not a prescription. Indeed, not all are. The resolution is aspirational and is a statement of values. All that we vote on here today is the plain language of the resolution itself and not the report. It's a step along the path. Please understand, there's nothing compulsory in this resolution. Yes, each jurisdiction determines for itself what measures are appropriate. This resolution, as I see it, is an encouragement to the various states to continue to take the sensible steps that they've started to take during this pandemic. Please join us in sending the message that it's okay to improve. It's okay to evolve. It's okay to innovate. It's okay to do better and be better.
Thank you, Mr. Morency. The speaker will now recognize Scholar Delegate Christopher Butler for his opposition remarks. Mr. Butler, you may proceed for up to 2 minutes.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chair. I come to you in opposition of this motion due to, as my previous opponent said, this doesn't do enough. As someone that recently took a bar exam right before the pandemic and having many colleagues and friends and classmates take the bar exam across the country during this pandemic, just having a broad supporting resolution isn't doing enough for what they all had to endure. And even as some of our colleagues that are about to take the bar in places like Texas are going to have to endure. The COVID-19 pandemic, as well as what's happening in Texas right now, both exacerbates and equally demonstrates for everyone to see the social inequities and the systemic inequities that we still have in the profession, from law students up to legal professionals. So what we need to do is make a guaranteed step in the right direction. And so I make a proposed amendment that we have sent to the proponent of the speaker to create a committee composed of different committees as well as the YLD to come together to further create equitable change in our profession regarding the bar examination. So that is not the competency standard that it's supposed to be, but it turned into a financial barrier and an exacerbator of systemic inequality in this country. So we need to make equitable change for our profession to make it progressive. As was stated earlier, our profession is slow to change. So, Mr. Speaker, I make a motion to amend.
Thank you, Mr. Butler. Given the technical difficulties of being in a virtual assembly, I would ask that the assembly please bear with us. What we are going to do is we do have the language that Mr. Butler would like to move to amend, and we're going to bring up a screen that hopefully should show it should hopefully reflect the amendments that Mr. Butler is looking to make. If we could get it up on the screen at this time. I'm hopeful that the assembly is able to view this. It's my understanding that this is the language that reflects the amendments sought by Mr. Butler. Given that there has been a motion to amend the resolution, and it has been seconded by Secretary Bond, we'll move to debate on the amendment. Are there any proponents of this amendment at this time?
Am I able to consider it a friendly amendment since it does not remove the original resolution?
Stand by. It's my understanding that since it was moved as a motion rather than a friendly amendment prior to starting today, that we need to move to a vote. So, Mr. Curtis, would you like to speak in favor?
Yes, I'll just quickly speak in favor. I think I'm completely in favor of this additional language. It proposes some concrete actions to be taken in addition to the original resolution. And so as the original drafter, I support the addition of this language. That's all, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Curtis. Are there any opponents to this amendment being included? If we could go back to the Google Doc so it's up on the screen so individuals could see it. And I'm searching to see if there are any opponents. I am not seeing any. We'll stand by for just a second. I know that we are coming close to time. on this debate.
For those who may not, who may be delegates who are not able to read it, should we read it out loud for them?
It is my hope that everybody can see it on the screen, even though it's fuzzy. But once we get to a vote on this assembly, we can ensure that on this amendment, we can ensure that it is read out as well. I am not in possession of any opposition speaker slips. We will move to a vote on the amendment at this time. All those in favor of this amendment, please raise your hand at this time using the raise hand function to indicate an aye vote. I am aware that the screen share function here could present accessibility issues. We will do our best to accommodate the time and accommodate the amendment and make sure that's read off shortly to the assembly. Again, everyone who wishes to vote in favor of this amendment, please raise your hand at this time. I still see hands going up. Please do it so at this time and keep your hand raised. While that's going, I will read it off because it's going to take a second to, I still see hands going up. The amendment says, further resolved that the American Bar Association Young Lawyers Division, by and through its assembly, urges the American Bar Association to appoint a committee to study the circumstances surrounding the 2020 bar administration and develop a set of best practices and model rules for administering future bar examinations that are both equitable to candidates for admission and that ensures public confidence in the profession. Further resolved that the ABA Young Lawyers Division, by and through its assembly, urges the American Bar Association to appoint a committee to develop a set of best practices and model rules for alternative bar admission practices or paths to licensure that are both equitable to candidates for admission and that ensures public confidence in the profession. Further resolved that the American Bar Association Young Lawyers Division, by and through its assembly, urges the American Bar Association to include young lawyers on any committee appointed in response to adoption of this resolution. When the tellers are ready, if you can make sure that you ensure that you have an accurate vote, and then lower the hands, and we'll move to any who are opposed to this amendment. So whenever the tellers have an accurate count, they can lower the hands. We'll keep it waiting for just a second while the tellers count the votes. Stand by all. I greatly appreciate your patience and the work of the tellers in ensuring that we're getting an accurate vote in these unusual circumstances of a virtual assembly. I am still seeing hands up, so I'm assuming that the tellers are still counting votes. So I would like to make a PSA at this time. I'd like to give a reminder of leadership appointments to serve during the next bar year under leadership of incoming Chair Troy Portis. Chair-elect Portis is seeking involvement from young lawyers who are interested in furthering their leadership skills, advancing national initiatives and causes. The deadline for submissions is March 1st, 2021, and we will drop the link into the chat in just a moment as well. All right, I am seeing the hands down now. So we will move to the nay vote. If you are opposed to the adoption of this amendment, please raise your hand at this time using the raise hand function. Again, if you are opposed to the adoption of this amendment, please raise your hand using the raise hand function at this time. While the tellers are counting that, I will move on to the next PSA. As a reminder, we do have a raffle going on today to encourage our delegates attending today to engage on social media. Please tag ABA YLD and use the hashtag YLD Midyear on Twitter to be eligible for that raffle. All right, I'm seeing that hands have mostly been lowered. I still see a hand, so I will stand by and wait for the delegate or the tellers to give me the accurate count here. All right, we have the votes, and this motion to amend is stands approved, and this amendment is now part of this resolution. We are out of time on this debate. However, the speaker will entertain a motion to extend debate from Delegate Kurbis. If Delegate Kurbis, you still wish to extend debate.
Yes, I do, Mr. Speaker. For 20 minutes, I think that should be more than enough.
Thank you, Delegate Kurbis. There is a motion on the floor for extending debate for 20 minutes. A motion to extend debate is not in and of itself debatable. It has been seconded automatically by Secretary Bond, and so we will move to a vote on the motion to extend debate by 20 minutes. All those in favor of extending debate by 20 minutes, please raise your hand at this time using the raise hand function. If we keep going to votes, I'm going to run out of PSAs. So I will not use a PSA at this time. Please, again, if you wish to extend debate at this time for 20 minutes, use the raise hand function. I am not seeing much change in the hands going up. So again, keep your hands up. The tellers will let me know when they are ready to move on to the nay votes, but we're still on the aye votes. Keep your hands up. I'm seeing hands go up, y'all. If you wish to vote in favor of the motion to extend debate by 20 minutes, raise your hand, keep your hand raised right now. Do it right now.
How many more speakers do we have lined up, pro and con, Mr. Speaker?
The speaker is in possession of three proponent speakers and no opponent speakers at this time, as well as the rebuttal for you, Delegate Kurbis. Again, if you wish to speak in favor or in opposition to the resolution as amended, please use the Q&A function and we can elevate you up to line you up on that as well. I am seeing that the hands have gone down. So if you wish to oppose and not extend debate by 20 minutes, please raise your hand at this time. If you do not wish to extend debate by 20 minutes at this time, please raise your hand. A motion to extend debate requires a 2/3 majority. And while I'm waiting for the tellers to give me the formal vote, it looks like we did not reach a 2/3 majority. But we will stand by for just a second until the tellers can confirm that.
To save us some time, I would like to defer 1 minute and 45 seconds to Pilar of my rebuttal, 1 minute and 40.
You're out of order. If you could just stand by for just a second, Mr. Kurbis. And I do have a motion slip pending to extend debate by a lesser amount of time too. So that is already on the floor. We will stand by for just a second. I'm receiving the information from the tellers now. Stand by. The motion to extend debate does not reach the 2/3 majority needed. The speaker now recognizes Delegate Anthony Scioli for a motion to extend. Mr. Scioli, how much do you wish to extend debate by?
Good afternoon, Mr. Speaker. Given that there are 3 salmon slips in support, I move that it be extended for only 6 minutes, which would reflect a maximum of 2 minutes per speaker.
Thank you, Delegate Scioli. There is a motion on the floor to extend debate by 6 minutes. 6 minutes. This needs a 2/3 majority, and we will move to a vote at this time. Is there, if you are in favor of extending debate by 6 minutes, please raise your hand using the raise hand function at this time. I am waiting for the tellers, and it looks like hands are still going up. So if you are in favor of extending debate by 6 minutes, please keep your hand raised and raise it using that raise hand function until we lower your hand. And do it now. Looks like the standby, looks like the tellers got the vote. I'm gonna ask the tellers just to confirm to me before we move on to the nay. Okay. We're gonna move on to the nay vote. If you are opposed to extending debate by 6 minutes, please raise your hand at this time. It looks like the motion to extend debate is not going to reach the 2/3 majority either, but keep your hands up. Raise your hands if you are opposed to extending debate. And give us just a minute so that our tellers can accurately count the votes. The hands have been lowered, and the tellers are telling me that we did not reach the 2/3 majority for extending debate by 6 minutes. So that is the end of time on of debate for 21-11 YL. Under our rules and Mr. Kurbis's previous reservation of time, he may proceed to his rebuttal at this time.
I would just like to ask if I could have someone speak in my stead in rebuttal and defer that time.
Mr. Kurbis, according to our parliamentarian, you may not defer or cede rebuttal time under Robert's rules. So, Mr. Kurbis, you may proceed for up to 4 minutes.
Well, first, I would like to thank Pilar and Vanya from United for Diplomatic Privilege, who came to speak as proponents, but due to time constraints are unable to speak. I apologize for you wasting your time, but I thank you for your showing of support. Same to Anthony Scioli, who also submitted a salmon slip to speak as a proponent. I realize that this assembly is happening during a work day, and I recall traveling to meetings. I've voted as a delegate many times in the assembly. And so I know that there's not always a chance to get to reading every single word in every single resolution. And so I will not use all 4 minutes, but I will spend about 40 seconds reading the conclusion of my resolution for those of you who have not had a chance to read it. This resolution does not propose a single fix-all solution to the bar exam. Instead, it supports the idea that the bar exam can and should be reimagined to reflect the modern practice of law as best fits the jurisdiction administering the exam. That may mean a remote bar, that may mean an open book bar exam, and that might mean no bar exam at all. In light of the issues discovered in administering the first online bar exams in our nation's history, the ABA should support bar authorities in reforming legal licensing consistent with the mission and goals of the American Bar Association, that is, to serve the public, deliver justice, promote the highest quality legal education, promote full and equal participation in our profession by all persons and without bias. And I think, especially in light of the amended resolution language, the ABA will be even better situated to do just that. So I urge adoption of this resolution. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Delegate Kurbis. Delegates, at this time, please take a second to consider your vote. The question on the table is on the adoption of revised resolution 21-11YL. This motion takes a simple majority. All those in favor of the motion of adopting resolution 21-11YL as revised, please vote using the raise hand function at this time. Again, if you are in favor of adopting the revised resolution 21-11YL, please raise your hand and keep it raised at this time. I'll say it one last time. Raise your hand and keep your hand raised if you are in favor of adopting this revised resolution. And while the tellers are counting the votes, I will move on to the next PSA for the day. The YLD Book Club. Meditation and mindfulness practices can support a more effective and enjoyable legal practice. Join the ABA YLD in their ongoing series discussing the best-selling book, The Anxious Lawyer, an 8-week guide to a joyful and satisfying law practice through mindfulness and meditation, by Gina Cho and Karen Gifford. And we will drop the link to those webinars and that book club into the chat in just a moment as well. I see that the tellers have lowered the hands, so we'll move to those who are opposed to adoption of resolution 21-11YL as revised. If you are opposed to 21-11YL as revised, please raise your hand using the raise hand function and keep it raised until we lower your hands. While we are waiting for the tellers to give us it looks like the tellers might have a vote in a second, but while we're waiting for the tellers to give us the results of the vote, I will announce that we have the NAC competition going on right now. Do you want to be a Supreme Court judge for a day? The ABA Law Student Division's National Appellate Advocacy Competition is in need of judges over the next few weeks. If you have any interest in volunteering as a judge, please contact Sarah Stretch. We will drop that link into the chat in a moment as well. The tellers have reported the final count, and this resolution, 21-11YL, is adopted as revised. Thank you to all of our speakers on this resolution. At this time, we will move to a special presentation from my friend and our division chair, Chris Brown.
Like many of you, I'm sure, the past few months have made me take a new inventory of things that I have long taken for granted. It might be something as simple as going to the store or into the office, and it might be something as momentous as the peaceful transfer of power in the world's oldest and greatest democracy. Turns out it was no exaggeration when Franklin spoke of creating a republic, if you can keep it. Who would have thought that the country would take such an interest in the mundane minutiae of election law that had long been perfunctory? Who would have thought we would see election workers of both major political parties threatened for performing their duties as prescribed by law? I never would have guessed that the integrity of these honorable public officials would be thrust into the spotlight as they were. One thing I never doubted, however, was the importance of good lawyers and the power of the rule of law to see truth and justice prevail. But the role of lawyers in the electoral process is not confined to the courts. Because of the pandemic, there were fewer poll workers available than usual. And this year, many states specifically requested attorneys serve as poll workers. Indeed, some states even offered CLE credit to those who served. You may have noticed that the ABA partnered with both the National Association of Secretaries of State and the state election directors for the Poll Worker Esquire initiative. Ultimately, Over 1,000 attorneys served as poll workers on Election Day in Ohio alone, part of a record-breaking turnout. After seeing the vital role that we can serve, I thought it was critically important to put forward a resolution urging the Bar Admission Authority of each jurisdiction to adopt rules that would allow attorneys to earn credit toward their CLE obligations for serving as poll workers. Currently, it's on the YLD Assembly consent calendar, and I look forward to taking it to the House of Delegates on behalf of the YLD at the annual meeting. Being halfway through the bar year, let's take a look at what we've accomplished so far. We started the bar year in the middle of a summer of righteous unrest and did our part to both educate and learn with our 5-part series, Redefining Justice, A Path Forward. From the how and why of D&I to the role of corporate America, the YLD produced fantastic programs to advance the conversation around acknowledging and ending systemic racism. At our fall conference, we focused on civility, wellness, and student debt. We knew going into this year that October 2020 would be a perfect time to talk about civility, and I'm proud that we provided a whole track of programming dedicated to the role of young lawyers, judges, and bar associations in cultivating and maintaining civility. With the help of staff, we also published what I sincerely believe is a landmark report on the impact of student loan debt on young lawyers. For some, the numbers are startling. The average young lawyer has $160,000 of student debt at the time of graduation, with about $130,000 of those dollars coming from law school alone. Over 75% of respondents claimed at least $100,000 of debt at the time of graduation. Do we want to tell young Americans that wish to join our esteemed profession that they must be willing to take out 6 figures of debt as a prerequisite? We've had a ton of great media coverage from Money.com and NerdWallet to Bloomberg Law, and of course I'm elated that our own ABA Journal used this as their cover story for the December-January issue. The next step is to create official ABA policy and start advocating. I'm proud of and thankful for the work of the YLD Student Loan Debt Team in partnership with YLD Speaker Chris Jennison in bringing forth 2 resolutions to the mid-year HOD meeting. One is an innovative resolution that urges Congress and the executive branch to implement programs to assist lawyers and law students experiencing financial hardship due to their student loan obligations. The other is specifically aimed at removing the undue hardship requirement to have student loan debt discharged in bankruptcy. There is still time to reach out to your state's HOD delegates and encourage them to support these critically important resolutions. Those are only a few of the highlights we have accomplished thus far in this unprecedented bar year. But it's also just the beginning, and it's not how you start, it's how you finish that matters. We're going to remain focused on wellness. We have a well-being series that will take place over the whole month of March, which we're going to kick off with a fireside chat with Gina Cho, author of The Anxious Lawyer. We'll also be using her book to have a book club to unite young lawyers from around the country and talk about how they can use mindfulness and meditation for a more meaningful practice and life. I'm already looking forward to our spring conference in partnership with the ABA section of State and Local Government Law. We're going to leverage that collaboration to provide fantastic mentorship and networking opportunities. The conference will focus on the themes of career development through the years, the relationship between the law and the land, and will include a Men of Color Project Summit. Save the date for April 13th through 15th and be on the lookout for registration materials soon. We're also currently working on a civic engagement summit for those of you who want to do more in public service. We'll be bringing together speakers from around the country with advice on how to get involved, whether it's running for local office, serving on a board, or providing legal counsel. We'll also be partnering with the Government and Public Sector Lawyers Division for a virtual skills conference in June, which will provide in-depth, interactive, skills-based CLE. I promise you, these will not be your typical run-of-the-mill CLEs. My fingers are crossed for an in-person annual meeting, which, unfortunately, I have no control over. But let's remain hopeful, and I promise one way or another, I'll see you soon.
Thank you, Mr. Brown, Chair Brown, for those remarks, and thank you for your leadership of this division. We will now hear from Troy Portis, ABA YLD Chair-elect, who will serve as Chair of the division for the 2022 2021-2022 bar year.
Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you all and your families are well. I'm here to present more information to you all regarding the 2021-2022 bar year, specifically the Men of Color Project, the Women of Color Project, the Public Service Project, Disaster Legal Services, and membership. With the Men of Color Project, we are looking to partner with the association's Commission on Racial and Ethnic Diversity to provide a longitudinal study regarding men of color in the profession. With the Women of Color Project, we will present programming that will highlight women of color in the profession in various roles, such as women of color in the judiciary and corporate counsel roles. The Public Service Project, entitled Operation Second Chance, will be a two-pronged project that will focus on, the first prong will focus on expungements, providing information and resources to our affiliates to conduct expungement fairs in their various jurisdictions. The second prong will focus on a partnership with the policy division to advocate for restoration of voter rights for returning citizens. Our disaster legal services team will have a focus on the COVID-19 pandemic, specifically staying abreast of and providing information and resources of changes in the law regarding the COVID-19 pandemic to our membership. Our membership team will focus on mental health and wellness and provide information and resources to our membership regarding mental health and wellness. Our ABA YLD appointments process is currently open. The applications process closes on March 1st, 2021. If anyone has any questions, comments, or concerns, please do not hesitate to contact me. I hope you all are staying safe and well, and I hope to see you all very soon.
Thank you very much, Chair-elect Portis. We're looking forward to your stewardship of the division next year. The next resolution for debate is 21-12YL. This resolution will not be considered by the ABA House of Delegates at this mid-year meeting. For the purpose of moving Resolution 21-12YL, the Speaker recognizes Delegate Chastity Burns of Chicago, Illinois, on behalf of the Chicago Bar Association Young Lawyers Section. Delegate Burns has reserved 2 minutes for rebuttal, and so at this time, Delegate Burns, you may proceed for up to 4 minutes.
Thank you. I'm Chastity Burns, the second vice chair of the Chicago Bar Association Young Lawyers Section and co-founder of our Racial Justice Coalition, formed in the wake of the deaths of George Floyd and so many others who have lost their lives and activated a stronger call for justice and reform. It is in this context, especially considering the death of Breonna Taylor during a botched warrant execution in Louisville, Kentucky last year, that I present this resolution in support of banning no-knock warrants. A no-knock warrant is essentially a search warrant authorizing law enforcement to gain entry and search private premises without giving notice of their authority and purpose for being there. Applied when there is a reasonable suspicion that knocking and announcing would be dangerous or would result in the destruction of evidence. No-knock warrants originated in 1970 with the Nixon administration, which introduced the no-knock warrants as part of a comprehensive drug abuse act. It was originally intended to have a narrow purpose, which would be to enforce anti-drug laws and to prevent drug dealers from literally flushing drugs down the toilet. However, the warrants proved to be so disruptive and ineffective that the Senate eventually repealed the no-knock warrant provision of that statute, but local law enforcement continues to use them. And the Supreme Court has actually ruled that evidence obtained from no-knock warrant searches need not be suppressed. So why are no-knock warrants so problematic? For several reasons. First, no-knock warrants and dynamic entry tactics erode the Fourth Amendment by discarding the idea of the presumption of innocence, which should really be the cornerstone of the criminal justice system. They are applied indiscriminately, having increasingly affected innocent people. The knock and announce rule, which is essentially the antithesis of no-knock warrants, are part of the reasonable inquiry under the Fourth Amendment. And it's supposed to give innocent people the opportunity to inform the police that they are innocent or that the police have the wrong address. Also, no-knock warrants fail to keep the public and law enforcement safe. They're executed in a manner that increases the likelihood of violent confrontation and decreases public safety. The disproportionate use of no-knock warrants and dynamic entry against communities of color means that they bear the brunt of the stress and the death tolls that come from these botched raids. Also, no-knock warrants are ineffective and costly. They rarely achieve their intended purpose, and they cause extensive property damage that homeowners generally don't get reimbursed for. Federal civil rights lawsuits requesting relief from these botched residential search warrants often result in multi-million-dollar settlements at taxpayer expense, and many times prosecutors don't even press charges against the officers that are involved. A few states have banned no-knock warrants: Oregon, Florida, and Virginia. In Oregon, law enforcement can only execute a search warrant within the period and at the times authorized by the warrant. In Virginia, law enforcement can only execute warrants during daytime hours unless for good cause shown. And in Florida, the Florida Supreme Court ruled that in the absence of express statutory authorization, no-knock search warrants are without legal effect there. The federal government, through Senator Rand Paul, has also proposed a Senate bill known as the Justice for Breonna Taylor Act, which would require federal law enforcement officers to provide notice of their authority and purpose before executing a warrant. However, these bans and proposals are not enough. None of these bills hold officers accountable for executing no-knock warrants. While some of them are clearly written, they introduce ambiguity in other ways. For example, Virginia's law allows judges to broadly authorize no-knock warrants as long as good cause is shown, and good cause is not defined in the statute. Oregon's statute does not define the people nor the actions to be taken that may reasonably be necessary to successfully execute the warrant. And the federal Breonna Taylor Act, which is only 3 sentences long, fails to restrict the times that the no-knock warrants can be executed, and it does not prevent illegally obtained evidence from being admitted in court. And so we propose that the ABA YLD should take the position that no-knock warrants should be banned at all levels of law enforcement, not just for federal officers. States should be required to establish and regularly review strict knock and announce guidelines in order to ensure officers notify the appropriate parties when they arrive at the scene to execute a warrant. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Burns. The Speaker is not in possession of any slips in opposition to this resolution at this time. As has been the case this whole assembly, if you wish to speak in opposition or in favor of the resolution, please use the Q&A function. We will elevate you and recognize you when we can. The Speaker will now recognize the next proponent speaker, Kenny Matuszewski of Chicago, Illinois.
Thank you very much, Assembly Clerk Jennison, and thank you very much to the ABA YLD and to all the delegates for having us here today. In further connotation with Delegate Burns's notices, 2 days ago, Utah actually struck down a resolution that would strengthen the no-knock warrant bans. In 2014, they tried advocating, they banned no-knock warrants solely for drug possession cases. They were trying to go even further with it as of 2021. But the legislation was carved out and hollowed to the point that it would only be allowed when the aim was to preserve evidence. Florida, in its no-knock warrant ban, is also applied inconsistently across the state and county level. Several counties have different standards in terms of when no-knock warrants can be issued. There's several ambiguities. There's several confusing aspects with regard to no-knock warrants. And frankly, states themselves are not doing enough to ensure that officers are held accountable and that there's certain practices that really and effectively ban no-knock warrants. The goal of the resolution is to be a floor. We want to ban no-knock warrants, but we recognize that this is a floor. States are able to enact stricter measures along with other territories and local governments in order to meet the needs of their constituents and ensure that people are able to live just safely in their homes. Again, most of these no-knock warrants are executed solely for drug possession purpose crimes, which go against which undermines the Fourth Amendment and ensures that it's unequally applied, especially with regard if it's only applied for drug warrant cases. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Matuszewski. The Speaker will recognize any opponent on this resolution, although the speaker is not in possession of any slips indicating opposition. Again, if you wish to speak in opposition, please use the Q&A function. We will elevate you. At this time, the speaker will recognize Martin D. Gold of Chicago, Illinois, to speak in favor. Delegate Gold, you may speak for up to 2 minutes.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for listening to our proposition here. I'm speaking in support of the ban on no-knock warrants. And I think one of the key questions that we have to ask is, do the dangers they pose to citizens in their own homes outweigh the benefits? And the answer is the dangers do not outweigh the benefits do not outweigh the dangers. If you look at some of the statistics, 70% of the no-knock warrants that were performed in Chicago didn't find any drugs or illegal weapons. And in 2010 to 2016, the New York Times reported that nearly 100 people were killed while officers were performing no-knock warrants. 13 of them were police officers. And the reasoning was simple. You're invading somebody's privacy in their own home. It creates people to have unsuspecting responses, and no-knock warrants are directly in conflict with the right to self-defense, to the Castle Doctrine, which explicitly permits use of deadly force against intruders. And when you throw in the fact that there's a Second Amendment and the proliferation of guns across the country, you're asking for a deadly cocktail there. 40% of homes in the United States have reported that there's a gun in the house. And when you take that into consideration, the minimal benefit you get from the no-knock warrants, which are primarily being used by local police departments when looking for marijuana, isn't worth it. And the only thing else I'd add to that is that when you throw in also the fact that there's so many different mistakes being made by law enforcement agencies when they're performing these no-knock warrants, you create a situation where at a time when the country needs to build trust between different communities, particularly those of African American and Hispanic
Delegate Gold, your time has expired.
Sure.
Thank you, Delegate Gold. I'm seeing no slips in opposition at this time. Again, if you wish to speak in opposition, please use the Q&A function to be recognized. We'll stand by for just a second, but I am seeing no delegates who wish to be recognized to oppose this resolution. Seeing no further debate, the speaker recognizes Delegate Burns for a rebuttal unless she chooses to waive.
Just briefly, Chris. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Delegates, I ask you on behalf of the CBA YLS and our Racial Justice Coalition to vote in favor of this resolution and be a part of the change that we need to reshape the landscape of the criminal justice system and to promote fairness, racial equity, and integrity in public safety. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Burns. Delegates, please take a second and consider your vote. The question on the table is on the adoption of Resolution 21-12YL. This motion takes a simple majority. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye at this time by using the voting function to raise your hand. Click raise hand, and please keep your hand up. Again, if you wish to speak in favor of this motion, if you wish to vote in favor of this motion, please raise your hand at this time using the raise hand function to vote aye. Please keep your hand up. While the tellers are counting the votes, I will make another PSA. Please join us for our spring meeting of the YLD, which will be held jointly with the section of state and local government. The meeting will be held virtually from April 13th to April 15th, 2021. Stay tuned for more information on that meeting as we get closer to that time. I'm still seeing that the tellers have not lowered the hands, so I will make another announcement. Again, please, if you're voting in favor of this resolution, raise your hand, keep your hand raised so that the tellers can get an accurate vote. The Embracing Diversity Challenge aims to increase diversity in the pipeline to the legal profession. Through the Embracing Diversity Challenge, young lawyer organizations are encouraged to share information about existing projects and develop new programs for increasing diversity in pipeline. Top young lawyer programs will be showcased at the 2021 YLD Spring Conference and awarded a sub-grant. Applications are due March 31st, 2021. I see that the tellers have lowered the hands, so we will move to anyone who is opposed to this resolution. If you would like to vote in opposition to this resolution 21-12YL, please raise your hand at this time using the raise hand function. Again, if you wish to oppose 21-12YL, please raise your hand using the raise hand function at this time to indicate your nay vote. Keep your hands raised until we lower your hands, please. See that the tellers have lowered the hands, so I will stand by for their count to report the results of this vote. The tellers have reported the vote, and this resolution 21-12YL is adopted by the Assembly. Thank you very much to the Chicago Bar Association Young Lawyers section for bringing this resolution forward. We will now move to a special presentation by Brandon Wolf, the YLD's treasurer.
My name is Brandon Lee Wolf, and I have the privilege of serving as your YLD treasurer. I'd like to give you a brief update on the finances of the division, as well as the work of our finance board. As you may be aware, the ABA is making cuts across the board. The Board of Governors has asked the YLD to cut approximately $85,000 from next year's budget, and the ABA will likely have additional cuts next year. Unfortunately, we will not receive credit for any positive variances this year. YLD staff has suggested ways to cut $85,000 while minimizing the impact on our members. The Finance Board agreed with the recommendations, which include having our cabinet meeting in conjunction with the spring meeting and having a virtual leadership meeting. We will also be looking at other options for one dinner dance and the Fellows Gala. We have communicated to the Fellows that we want to plan a fun but less costly event, such as another Fellows debate reception or another informal event where young lawyers can network with the Fellows. We also have recommended that our national conferences team plan additional dine rounds in place of the dinner dance and to plan a less costly networking event, including with other sections, divisions, and forums before the dine rounds. We want to make sure our members have the same opportunities to network with a large group of members without the significant cost of a dinner dance. Next, I'd like to update you on the work of our subcommittees. One of the first initiatives we focused on was providing YLD members with the option to receive publications by email instead of by mail in order to save on printing, postage, and the environment. If you'd like to change the way publications are delivered, you can now do so by logging into your ABA account. We will also be sending an email to all of our members with information on how to make these changes, especially as our publications will be mailed to more members when the definition of a young lawyer changes later this year. Next, our Charitable Contributions Subcommittee is working with the Fund for Justice and Education to seek contributions which will be used to fund other initiatives, such as future changes to the reimbursement policy. Our Reimbursement Policy Subcommittee is working on making recommendations to update the policy and also working on a financial need policy for new attorneys and government attorneys. Our Sponsorship Subcommittee is working on a new initiative with our liaisons to the sections, divisions, and forums to provide funding for scholars during their second year once they complete their scholar year. We will be asking each section, division, and forum to sponsor one young lawyer to attend conferences during the year. This will allow the YLD to serve as an off-ramp for young lawyers to become leaders with the sections, divisions, and forums once they age out of the YLD. Our Affordable Conferences Subcommittee is continuing to work on achieving affordable options once we resume in-person conferences by exploring hybrid options and weekend meetings. As we continue to meet virtually, we have the opportunity to reach young lawyers who may not have traveled to in-person conferences. Please encourage young lawyers in your state to register for our virtual conferences. Registration fees are one of the few areas where you can help to bring in revenue into the YLD. Finally, we could always use more help, so please let me know if you are interested in helping with any of our subcommittees. Thank you.
Thank you, Treasurer Wolf, for your careful work managing finances of the division. Before we turn to the next resolution, we will have a special presentation from the ABA Center for Human Rights. big thank you to the center for sharing that video with us. I know I've seen it a few times in preparation for today's assembly, and every time I watch it, I am reminded of the incredible work of our profession and of our association. If anyone wishes to learn more about the center's work, please reach out to us and we can put you in touch. The next resolution up for debate is 107B. This resolution will be considered by the House of Delegates on this at this mid-year meeting on Monday, and as such is not eligible for amendment by this assembly. For the purpose of moving resolution 107B, the speaker recognizes Mark Schickman of San Francisco, California. Mr. Schickman is a delegate to the House of Delegates from the section of Civil Rights and Social Justice and is a former speaker of this assembly. Mr. Schickman has reserved 2 minutes for rebuttal and so may speak at this time for up to 4 minutes. Mr. Schickman, you may proceed when ready.
Thank you, Chair Jennison. I would move resolution 107B.
Thank you, Mr. Schickman. All of our motions today have been seconded by our secretary. So it is moved and seconded and you may proceed.
Thank you so much. And it's always wonderful to get back in front of the YLD Assembly, one of my favorite organizations within the ABA, and my commendations to you for how wonderfully it's being run right today's session, Chair Jennison. I come before you with a fairly simple proposition. 107B stands for 2 points, and these 2 points are underscored by what your Chairman Brown said in his comments, that we are the world's oldest, and I would submit best democracy. And one reason for that is because of the peaceful transition of power and the recognition of the primacy of the vote of the populace that allows us to change power every 4 years without any dilemmas. So what does this do? 2 propositions. One, that the electors should vote the will of the people. In the state that they're in, District of Columbia is by a district level, and there are 2 states that don't do it on a statewide basis, but according to their established rules within districts themselves. But whatever the vote of the people was, the electors need to carry that out. The second point of the proposition is that you can't change the rules midstream. And it's critically important in our view that that be the case, not only as members of this republic and of this democracy, but we as lawyers understand that as well. And we in this assembly understand that as well, that we understand what the rules are at the start and we follow them along the way. I think that these are really clear propositions, and I'm glad that there's support within this group. I'm unaware of any opposition, but I've reserved some time in case there are. So there are really only 2 observations I want to make. First, this is not a partisan issue. This is an issue which I think a lot of us are shocked have ever come up, but it's not partisan. If you recall, 4 years ago last month, 2017, there was a dump Trump movement. And it was in fact Democratic Party activists who went to state houses, including Minnesota and Wisconsin, to argue that the electors should not vote for the candidate who got the most votes, in that instance, because arguing that they're not qualified. And it worked in terms of 2 electors. The 45th president earned 306 electoral votes and received 304 electoral votes. Why? Because 2 electors decided to change their vote because they disagreed with the conclusion. This resolution would say it's not up to them. The second part of this, second observation I'd make about it, and it's almost humorous, is that we in America appear to be more comfortable with the fact that rules are rules when it comes to championship football games than when looking at the election. There are friends of mine who are huge New Orleans Saints fans who thought that there was either a phantom pass interference call or a pass interference call that wasn't called in the last second of a game, which changed the outcome, clearly changed the outcome. And yet everybody there can sit there and say, those are the rules, the game is over, we accept the conclusion. And here too, the notion of saying that after the game has been played, we are going to change the rules, this resolution says no. The only way this can effectively work is when that's the case. So with that, I urge your support for this resolution.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Schickman, and apologies on interrupting you. This speaker is in possession of no opposition slips at this time to this resolution. As has been the case all assembly, if you wish to speak in opposition, please use the Q&A function to be recognized. We will turn to the next proponent on this resolution, Renee Morency of St. Louis, Missouri. Mr. Morency, you may proceed for up to 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This resolution may seem on its face obvious or even unnecessary. I wish that were so. Regrettably, the most recent election cycle saw cases brought to advance the extraordinary idea that the state legislatures should themselves directly appoint the state's electors. The fact is that uniform state practice for 2 centuries has been to award the state's electoral votes to the candidate with the largest number of popular votes in that state, with minor exceptions as noted in the report. Particularly since 1876, from sea to shining sea, the American citizenry has come to rely on this ordinary course of elections. That reliance has kept the peace here at home. Furthermore, you can read in the report how Title III of the United States Code seeks to ensure that elections in each state reflect the popular will. The resolution urges, in part, that if a controversy over the electoral votes of any state should reach Congress, as may happen in certain circumstances, Congress should give effect to the outcome of the popular vote in each state. The provisions of this resolutions have a basis in law, in custom, and in a fundamental principle that we all share, regardless of party, persuasion, or affiliation, and that is to keep the peace.
Ms. Morency, the speaker is in possession of no slips either in opposition or in favor to this resolution at this time. We'll stand by for just a moment in case anybody wishes to be recognized. Again, use the Q&A function to be recognized if you wish to speak. Absent any speaker slips or Q&As, which I'm not seeing, we will return to Mr. Schickman for a 2-minute rebuttal unless he chooses to waive.
Mr. Chair, echoing the words of Mr. Morency, I will waive my time.
Thank you very much. Delegates, please take a second to consider your vote. The motion on the table is on the adoption of House of Delegates Resolution 107B. We will move to I votes. If you wish to vote in favor of this resolution, please use the raise hand function at the bottom of your screen and keep your hands raised until our tellers can verify your votes. I'm out of PSAs that I prepped in advance, but there are a couple that I'm going to reiterate because they're so important. So I'll start by saying today is the deadline at 6 p.m. Eastern. So you don't have much time to apply for a ABA presidential appointment. There are more than 600 appointments to different committees, commissions, entities, and initiatives. And young lawyers are highly valued for application. Please get those in if you have any interest. I see that the tellers have lowered hands, so I will ask that if you wish to vote in opposition to Resolution 107B, you wish to vote in opposition to 107B, please raise your hand at this time. Again, if you wish to vote nay on HOD Resolution 107B, please raise your hand using the raise hand function at this time. Thank you all for your patience while our tellers are verifying the votes. All right, the tellers have lowered hands, and I will stand by for their report. (107B) is adopted by the Assembly. Thank you, Mr. Schickman, and thank you, Mr. Morency, for your remarks. We will move on to the next presentation by the ABA Death Penalty Representation Project.
Hi, my name is Emily Olsen-Galt, and I'm Director and Chief Counsel of the ABA's Death Penalty Representation Project. Thank you so much for the opportunity to join you here virtually today. At the project, our mission is to ensure that every person facing a death sentence receives due process and fairness through effective representation. Unfortunately, those facing the death penalty are often the people that are least able to afford counsel or advocate for themselves. There is also a critical lack of resources and training for capital defense teams, and most shocking of all, there is no constitutional right to counsel for capital prisoners beyond the very early stages of their appeals. That's why the project partners with attorneys like you who can donate your time and skills to assisting a prisoner in need. Together with our pro bono attorneys, we have saved more than 100 prisoners from unjust executions, including several who are actually innocent. And hundreds of cases are still ongoing, but we still need more help. The recent spate of federal executions, where courts were routinely barred from considering constitutional claims of error, shows just how intensely vulnerable capital prisoners remain. That's where all of you can make a difference. You don't need any criminal defense experience or expertise. We will provide the training and guidance if you bring your passion and dedication to seeking justice. Visit our website at americanbar.org/deathpenalty, contact the project, and learn how you can be a literal lifeline to a prisoner in need. Thank you.
This is the heart and soul of the American justice system. What we do for individuals without representation or who have not had adequate representation is very important to the integrity and the credibility of our justice system.
There are men and women all over many states in this country who have no ability to get any kind of competent representation.
The defense lawyer and the prosecutor have opposite roles. Both of them are supposed to represent their client as vigorously as possible. And I think, unfortunately, in the real world, people on death row don't get that vigorous representation.
This profession sees as its obligation to ensure that everybody in this country is assured adequate access to our courts, but more importantly, very good and solid representation on their cases.
Being on death row is one thing, but being on death row without a lawyer is like being hopeless. You don't know the system yourself, and you need someone to fight for you, and it makes a world of difference to know that you have someone that's competent.
I'm very proud of the fact that the American Bar Association offers great opportunities for lawyers, both young and old, to participate in one of the most gratifying, self-fulfilling, and important aspects of being a lawyer that we can have.
Today, I'm a volunteer death penalty lawyer because it's energizing work, it's fascinating, I think it's important, and also you really are representing somebody in dire circumstances.
The day when I got out, the first thing I did was I called my mother. And I called my mom and I asked my mom, "What you cooking?" Because my mom didn't know, nobody knew. So I asked my mom, "What you cooking?" And she said, "Why?" And I said, "'Cause I'm coming home. You know, your son is now coming home. Good people have done great work to get me back home."
As always, if you wish to learn more about the work of the project, please contact us and let us know, and we can connect you with the right people. The next resolution up for debate is 111. This resolution will be considered by the ABA House of Delegates at its mid-year meeting on Monday, and as such is not eligible for amendment by this assembly. For the purpose of moving Resolution 111, the Speaker recognizes Anthony Scioli of the Virgin Islands. Mr. Scioli has agreed in advance to waive his time to Mr. Frank, who is not eligible to move the resolution itself. Mr. Frank has reserved 4 minutes for rebuttal, and so may speak at this time for up to 4 minutes. Mr. Frank, is that correct? You wish to
Yes, I will speak for 4 minutes and reserve 2 minutes for rebuttal.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Frank. You may proceed for up to 4 minutes.
Thank you, and I appreciate the opportunity to address the Young Lawyers delegation today. On behalf of the Standing Committee on Gun Violence, I am honored to be here to talk about Resolution 111. Resolution 111 has broad support from ABA entities, Commission on Hispanic Legal Rights and Responsibilities, the Commission on Sexual Orientation and Gender Identity, the Standing Committee on Election Law, Section of Civil Rights and Social Justice, and the Criminal Justice section. We have agreed to amend the resolution, and I will preview that for you. The amendment will be presented to the House of Delegates on Monday. And based on that discussion with the Judicial Division on the amendment, we now have the Judicial Division support. We also have the support of the State and Local Government section, the ABA Coordination Group on Practice Forward, and the Board of Governors of the ABA just voted to support the resolution. The amendment makes it clear that the resolution builds off of Resolution 105A, which was passed in 2019 concerning guns in courthouses. It also builds off of prior policy dealing with guns in schools. Essentially, this resolution is designed to protect the election process and the free assembly of people in public places without the fear of firearms and armed intimidation. While in the past, I had stood before the House of Delegates on many occasions on gun violence prevention measures, which are designed to protect public health and safety. This resolution not only does that, but I am now here also to preserve our democracy and the essential functions of our democracy. And in that light, I very much appreciated President Chris Brown's remarks about the election process that we saw and the aftermath of it. When you read Resolution 111, you would think that we had drafted this resolution with the insurrection at the Capitol on January 6, 2021 in mind. The fact of the matter is that this resolution was drafted well before the unfortunate threat to our democracy at that time. But keep in mind that guns, firearms, are prohibited on the grounds at the US Capitol. Imagine what could have happened if people were open carrying as part of that mob, or people had firearms as part of that mob. Instead of using American flags to break into the Capitol, they could have shot their way into the Capitol. And what might have ensued? What this resolution does is it asks for state houses and places where there are public meetings, where places where people vote, where people gather to express their opinions, to have the same protections as the US Capitol does. I ask that you consider 111, that you approve it, along with all the other ABA entities that have done so, and that we move forward on Monday to the House of Delegates to make this a strong policy of the ABA, so the ABA can continue to stand up for the rule of law and for justice. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Frank. The speaker is not in possession of any slips in opposition. Again, if you wish to speak in opposition to this resolution, please use the Q&A function. The speaker now recognizes YLD Treasurer Brandon Wolf to speak as the next proponent speaker. Delegate Wolf, you have up to 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My name is Brandon Lee Wolf, and as you just heard, I'm the treasurer of the Young Lawyers Division. I'm also a member of the Standing Committee on Gun Violence, and I rise in support of this resolution. This is the second time I am speaking at this assembly in support of a Standing Committee on Gun Violence resolution. For purposes of background, I started an anti-violence organization when I was 14. I was initially inspired by the violence at Columbine High School and the string of school shootings in 2001. It is for this reason that I chose to get involved with the Standing Committee on Gun Violence. Turning to this resolution, I am sure many delegates initially thought that this resolution was drafted as a result of the events that took place on January 6th at the Capitol. As you just heard, this resolution was drafted last year. However, this resolution has become even more important after January 6th. That day showed more than ever that we must not allow civilians to display firearms in locations that are critical to the function of the democratic process, such as where legislative debate is conducted and where ballots are cast, received, processed, and counted. We cannot allow armed intimidation to interfere with the electoral process. While the events on January 6th may have been the most extreme, the events in Michigan last year were another example of civilians displaying firearms at the state capitol, which caused one legislative session to be postponed out of fear for the lawmakers' safety. When civilians with firearms are inside government buildings, legislators and their staff are clearly at risk. However, legislative debate and lawmaking that is at the core function of our democracy is also at risk. When the threat of violence intersects with our government and our elections, people can and have been killed. Even if no one is hurt, it lowers public confidence in the electoral process, undermines our core constitutional values, and threatens our democracy. We must urge policymakers at all levels of government to adopt and enforce policies to prevent this conduct. Thank you in advance for your support of this important resolution.
Thank you, Delegate Wolf. The speaker is still not in possession of any slips in opposition. We'll stand by for just a second to see if there are any slips in opposition or from those who wish to speak as proponents to this resolution. I am not seeing any. Okay, we will recognize Mr. Frank for a 2-minute rebuttal unless you choose to waive.
I will waive. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Frank. Delegates, please take a second to consider your vote. The question on the table is on the adoption of this resolution. The motion takes a simple majority. All those in favor of this motion say aye at this time by using the raise hand function and keeps your hands raised. Again, if you wish to vote aye at this time, use the raise hand function and keep your hand raised. And again, while I'm out of PSAs, I think that the conversation about the Standing Committee on Gun Violence is a good reminder, again, that you only have about 90 minutes to get in your presidential appointment applications if you wish to be considered for presidential appointments by President-elect Reggie Turner. I am waiting for the delegates, for the tellers to give me a delegate vote count on this, and I am still seeing hands go up. So again, please, if you wish to vote in favor of this resolution, raise your hand and using the raise hand function, do so now so we can get an accurate count. The longer it takes for people to vote, the longer it takes for our tellers to verify those votes. Thank you all for standing by while we embrace our technical issues and the difficulty it is to have a virtual assembly. I see that the tellers have lowered the hands. So we will move to the nay vote. If you wish to vote in opposition to this resolution, please raise your hand at this time using the raise hand function. Again, if you wish to vote in opposition to Resolution 111, please use the raise hand function to raise your hand at this time and keep your hand raised until we lower them. Thanks all for your patience. I'm standing by for the tellers to give us the vote count. Resolution 111 is adopted by this assembly. Thank you to Mr. Frank and the Standing Committee for bringing the resolution to our attention. Thank you all for a terrific set of debate on resolutions. I'd like to turn now to Clerk Connor for a report on the Twitter raffle winners.
Hi. Thank you all so much again for engaging with our social media today for the ABA YLD Assembly. I know that there were some people who definitely were trying to make sure they increased their odds by tweeting throughout the entirety of today's ABA YLD Assembly. So without further ado, I will name the individual prizes for engaging on social media on Twitter for ABA YLD Assembly. For the Quimby CLE package winner, Ramana Ramanswaran, congratulations, you have won. And for the $75 gift card winner, Megan Peterson, congratulations, you have won. Thank you for everyone engaging today, and we had a wonderful assembly. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Clerk Connor. As one of our last pieces of business today, I would like to announce the slate of current candidates for YLD office. The final slate of candidates is not final until the close of this assembly here today. However, I would like to introduce those who have already announced that they are seeking office to be elected at the annual 2021 meeting. We can move to the next slide. We will have an election of secretary. Secretary will rise to be chair-elect and then chair. We have two candidates currently for that position, Tamara Nash of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and Matthew Kurbis of Chicago, Illinois. For the position of clerk, we have two candidates as well. The position of clerk rises to be the speaker, and the two candidates are Shasta Inman of Albuquerque, New Mexico, and Rich Rivera of Jacksonville, Florida. And for the position of YLD delegate to the HOD, we have two candidates, Casey Payton of St. Thomas in the U.S. Virgin Islands, and Renee Morency of St. Louis, Missouri. I would please ask you all to, when you see any of these candidates, congratulate them. It is terrific that they are willing to step up and put their name forward for consideration into division leadership. At the same token, I would also ask you all to please support and congratulate those who came up with resolutions for consideration today. It takes a lot of work to get a resolution to the point where we can bring it before the assembly. And I truly congratulate all of those who submitted resolutions. That concludes the business of the assembly. I want to thank all of the delegates for taking time out of their weeks to participate. I want to thank all the staff and volunteers who make our work possible. Delegates, we must now vote on adjournment. It takes a simple majority. All those in favor of this motion, please say aye at this time by using the voting function to raise your hand and keep your hand up. All right, I am seeing a clear majority here. And if tellers, let's lower the hands. And if you wish to vote to continue business, please vote at this time by indicating nay with the raise hand function. All right, we are adjourned today. Thank you all so much for your participation. I look forward to seeing you at the next YLD meeting.